This is best personified in the case Monsanto versus Schmeiser that lasted from 1998 to 2004, and the first part of which is shown here.
Well, it's really great to be here with you this afternoon in New Mexico. I never thought that when I was here in September, I would be back so quick, almost only 2 months ago. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone involved for bringing my wife and myself here to Albuquerque. And as I said, I hope that the message I leave with you, that you will never ever introduce GMOs here into your state. A brief background. My wife and I come from Saskatchewan, which is almost due north from here, about 2,000 miles. And we're in the heart of the grain growing area and in the central part of the province. And I often think how fortunate we are that our grandparents, who basically came from Europe over 100 years ago, picked that particular part of the world to settle and open up a new land. My wife and I are known in Saskatchewan, or were known in Saskatchewan, as seed developers and seed savers in especially rapeseed. And we started doing that. I took the family farm over from my father about 1947, and when my wife and I were married in 1952, she came from a farm background and immediately got involved with the new development and research and new varieties of rapeseed for on the prairies, not only for increased yield, but especially for disease control. Now, 4 crops were introduced, GMO crops, in 1996. And that was, as was mentioned before, soya, corn, cotton, and rapeseed. And we call it canola back home. Those were the 4 crops. And I often remember what the companies, especially Monsanto, told the farmers at that time. They said increased yields, more nutritious, less chemicals, and the other words they used, now we'd be able to feed a hungry world, we'd always have sustainable agriculture. That's what farmers were told back in 1996. After 2 years of the introduction of GMOs, which would be 1998, and as I mentioned, we were seed developers and seed savers, using our seed from year to year like hundreds or thousands of farmers do every year, and saving our seeds. So 1998, without any former knowledge or any notice from Monsanto, we received a lawsuit from them one day, and in that lawsuit it stated that we were growing Monsanto's GMOs, rapeseed or canola, without a license from them. And that really really surprised us, because we really then immediately realized that all our research and development of 50 years was now contaminated, possibly with Monsanto's GMO canola. And we said to Monsanto, if you have contaminated our canola that we worked so hard for 50 years to develop, then you should be guilty and you should pay for the damages. So that's what we said to Monsanto at the time. Now, it was a patent infringement case. Now, patent laws in most countries of the world, including Canada, come under federal jurisdiction, and we would have no choice of where the case would be heard. Federal Court of Canada with 1 judge. And how often we wished later on that we could have had a judge and jury with farmers on that jury that knew and understood farming, but that was not to be. Now, so we stood up to Monsanto, it goes to federal court. Takes 2 years to go to court to trial. But in the 2 years previously to the trial, Monsanto admitted they had no record or evidence that we had ever purchased their seed or obtained their seed, but they said that did not matter because they had contaminated us. They now owned our seeds or plants. So that was the basis it went to the federal court. Now, what the trial judge ruled is what made the case become internationally known around the world overnight. And he ruled this. He said it does not matter how a farmer is contaminated with Monsanto's GMOs, and in our case, canola. And he went on to say how that could happen. Cross-pollination, with pollen flown in the wind, or by bees, or direct seed movement, by transportation of grains by farmers, in this case canola, or by seeds blown in the wind. And he said if that happens, a farmer no longer owns his seeds or plants. And you can imagine what made that case then become so known around the world immediately. He also ruled, which really hurt us, he said we were not allowed to use our seeds or plants again, and all our research and development of 50 years also goes to Monsanto because of the contamination. He also ruled this: it does not matter the level of contamination. If it's 1% or 2% or 5% or 8%, doesn't matter. If you are contaminated, you no longer own your seeds or plants under patent law.
While EU countries have adopted tough legislation on the labeling of GM food and regulation that requires companies like Monsanto to be financially liable for potential losses that farmers could incur as a result of genetic contamination, developing countries like Mexico still struggle with the risk of contamination years after the commercial production of GM maize grown with Monsanto seeds was banned in 1998. A study published by Ignacio Chapela of Berkeley showed the continued presence of transgenes in new crops planted after the moratorium was issued, endangering the biodiversity of one of the country's major crops. Biodiversity is critical for ensuring natural sustainability that gives natural ecosystems a better chance to withstand and recover from a variety of natural and man-made disasters. Chapela's study was originally published in Nature in November 2001, but following several criticisms, the editor withdrew the article shortly after for the first time in the journal's 133-year history. Two journalists of the GM Watch website then shared investigative information exposing Monsanto's links to an aggressive email campaign that was launched on the internet through a PR firm called the Bivings Group that proudly offers viral marketing services and advice on how to infect the world. That's a line straight off their website. In 2003, Chapela was then denied tenure from Berkeley and moved his office onto the university lawns in an unusual protest. After much criticism, he was re-granted tenure in 2005, and in December 2008, just recently, the Journal of Molecular Ecology confirmed Chapela's findings of contamination in native corn in Mexico. This confirmation came 10 years after the moratorium was issued. The next video clip is an interview with Marie-Monique Robin, a French director who released a documentary last year called The World According to Monsanto, in her effort to gauge the authenticity of the company's GM seed claims. This documentary is yet to be screened in America.
I decided to make this documentary because, Monsanto is saying that GMOs are safe for consumers, safe for the environment, and I thought, my God, can we trust a company when it is saying that?
Monsanto's GMOs have invaded the planet, but no ag industry product in history has ever incited as much controversy and passion. Why? What's at stake with GMOs? And could the company's past shed some light on what the company is or claims to be today?
Monsanto has been created, at the beginning of the 20th century, exactly in 1901, in Missouri, in St. Louis. It used to be a very big chemical company, and they made very nice products like PCBs, for instance. What I could reveal is that Monsanto knew from the very beginning that these PCBs were very toxic, and that's so toxic that they are now forbidden, but Monsanto concealed the data. There is a very interesting internal file which is declassified now, which says, "We can't afford to lose $1 of business." I think this sentence is a very good summary, of their practices.
Terry was my baby brother. He died in 1971 from a cancer of the brains, or a tumor of the brains, cancer of the lungs, and hurries of the heart. He was 16. In the last 3 years, I have lost more friends. They died from illnesses, cancer, sugar diabetes, hepatitis, all these different ailments that comes with PCBs, and they have been related to PCB.